this is the third type of trig equation that can be thought of in quadratic form. This one has a trig function, secant, that's squared. It also has it just to the regular first power, but this one's not set equal to 0. So it really has 3 terms. So we're going to have to use a more complicated technique. We're going to put this as a trinomial with 3 terms, and then we will factor it. So we'll have to use techniques of trinomial factoring. Okay, so first of all, anytime we're doing factoring, we do need it set equal to 0. So we'll need to subtract 2 from both sides. And so then we'll have secant squared theta minus the secant of theta minus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, so now you can see 1, 2, 3 terms. So this is like a trinomial. So we're going to use a trick that we learned way back at the beginning of the year. When something's in quadratic form, it's not a straight quadratic equation with just a variable squared. Then you can look at it in quadratic form. You can use a substitution to make it easier to work out. So here is what I'm going to substitute. I'm going to say let's let, and you pick a totally different variable like u, and it's going to equal our trig function that's being squared as well as just to the first power. So in this case, it's going to be the secant of theta. So anywhere I have the secant of theta, I'm going to replace it just with a single variable u. Now, if u is the secant of theta, then we'll know that u squared is the secant of theta squared, which we know you can write without the parentheses, and put the 2 in that location. All right, so this equation up here where I have secant squared, that's going to be u. Where I have secant, that's going to be u squared. Where I have secant, that'll be u. So this equation will temporarily be looked at as u squared minus u minus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, that is a true quadratic equation, and we will go ahead and factor it. And it factors into u minus 2 times u plus 1. And that's equal to 0. And then we use the 0 product property. If we have 2 factors with a product of 0, then one of these factors itself has to be equal to 0. So either u minus 2 equals 0, or u plus 1 is equal to 0. And then when we solve these, we'll get that u is equal to 2, or u is equal to -1. All right, now once we have it solved for our temporary variable, then we have to go back to reality. So u really means the secant of theta. So we're looking for where the secant of theta is equal to 2, or where the secant of theta is equal to -1. Now, secant is easier thought of with its reciprocal cosine. So wherever the secant is equal to 2, the cosine is equal to 1/2. And where the secant is equal to -1, the cosine also will be equal to -1. Okay, so if we just think about places on our unit circle, the cosine is equal to 1/2 at pi over 3. And directly below that at 5 pi over 3. The cosine is equal to -1 all the way at the far left at pi. So those are going to be our 3 solutions. Theta could be pi over 3, pi, or 5 pi over 3.